Okay. Can I get any confirmation that my screen is visible?
Okay,
Okay, I
I
can
think
see
you
some.
guys should mute. Okay, Phyllis, can you see like reactions just to be sure?
Yeah. I can see some. I
Oh,
can see reaction on my own tab.
okay.
Okay, that's nice. So I'm going to kick things off. So mastering test case creation for quality assurance. I'll just run through the introductory aspect of what we're going to cover. So basically, we're going to cover the importance of effective test case, understanding test plan, components of a test case, effect, and writing effective test cases, creating test scenarios from to test cases, and also test suite management. So let me just fast forward to test plan. What is a test plan? Understanding the test plan. So a test plan is basically a document that outlines the testing class strategy, the um, the requirements, and ensure effective quality assurance. So usually, each test plan is part of the software testing life cycle. As we have. I don't know if we are all familiar with the software testing life cycle. This is going to be an interactive session, so I may be throwing in a little questions here and here. Can anyone remind me what the software testing life cycle consists of? You all are free to unmute and also speak. I don't know if someone is trying to say anything.
Yeah, Daniel is raising his hand, and
Oh,
Adivia.
okay. Okay, Daniel, sure, you can go for it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Daniel.
Software life cycle um, starts from planning to analysis, designs, development, verification, deployment, maintenance.
Okay, so that is correct, but what you just explained was software development life cycle, SDLC. So what I'm asking for is software testing life cycle. There's a difference between SDLC and STLC. Does
Actually,
anyone, okay?
um,
Do you want
let me try it out. Requirements gathering, collecting and analyzing project needs. Is this same thing, or am I still repeating what I say?
yes. I think you're still going on the same path.
All right, no problem.
Can I help?
Okay, sure. I think so. Yeah, yes, you're free.
Okay.
Anyone can go next.
Okay, we have the requirements analysis stage. Then second one is test planning. Third is test case
Mm-hmm,
development. Fourth is
mm-hmm,
test environment setup. Fifth is
mm-hmm.
test. That's the testing stage. And the last one is reporting or and test closure.
Mm, yes. You are correct. And does anyone have any other different answer, or do we all agree? So I take the silence. Okay, I think someone's hands is up. Sure, you can go for it. I think someone's trying to raise their hand, or was that a mistake? Okay, yeah, Daniel, right? Yeah, you can go ahead. Or is there another Daniel? I'm seeing two Daniel. I'm not sure which is it.
Yeah, we have two Daniels. Daniel Christopher.
Okay, good
Oh,
afternoon, everybody.
yeah. Good afternoon.
Okay, so the software testing life cycle, STLC, is it's like a structured process of where you ensure that you deliver quality software. It's like a systematic testing type of way, and it consists of I think the first thing we have to do is we gather our requirements, like understand the requirements and analyze it, and we do our test planning. And in cases where we have to write test cases, we do our test case development, and of course, the test environment too as well. Cases where we have to, put up a test environment, we do that, set that up. Most times, developers help us do that, and then we execute our tests, and that's after doing our smoke testing, sanity testing, and we also close our tests. So I think these are the steps that we take to ensure that we deliver quality software. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that detailed explanation. But let me just correct a little thing. We always write test cases. There's never going to be a time a QA would not write test case. But as far as testing is involved, test case documentation and execution is a must. So yeah, you all are correct. Yes. So just let me just give a summary of what software testing lifecycle includes of. So we just have requirement analysis, test planning, which is what we're going to be talking about, then test case development, also what we plan to discuss in this session, environment setup, test execution, and test cycle closure. Now, what is a test plan? Let's go back to exactly where we were before again. A test plan outlines the testing strategy and objectives and requirements to ensure effective quality assurance. Basically, a test plan is just like your go-to guide on how you will execute the testing process. Now, before testing even starts, like the meet and greet hard work of writing your test cases, there must be a set objective. There must be like an aim, an objective to achieve, and there must be some form of strategy, and there must be like an entry and exit criteria. Now, in this document, I'm going to explain what each of those key elements are needed to comprise of a good test plan. Okay. I think I've not added this guys here.
Okay, while we wait for Phoenix to uh Phoenix can hear me. I don't know if he's a network. Oh yeah, want to fix something. Okay, while we wait for Phoenix to come back. Then Christopher, I wanted to say something, right? You raised your hand earlier. Hi, Christopher.
Yes, I wanted to say
Mm,
about the test cases. There are some instances where we don't have to write test cases, like let's say context driven testing. So that I wanted to like point that out for yeah.
okay. So apparently you need to write test cases at all time. That's the truth. Though some companies jump that.
Yeah, yeah. Some
Yeah.
companies also
But
jump down.
yeah, but the process is that you must write your test case.
Yeah, sure.
If you're going to follow the process, you must
Yeah,
write your test case. And test cases help you to, I think Place is going to also like touch that. It helps you to
okay.
cover uh, a critical or some edges that you wouldn't have covered if you're just testing. So finish
Yeah.
with does that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Then
you.
episode my side too. No, no, nothing. Don't say anything. All right.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yeah, so sorry
You can.
about that. My internet went off.
All right. All right. Welcome back.
Yes. All right, thank you. Let me just share my screen back again. So I don't know if my screen is still visible. Before the break, I'll try to explain what a test case usually entails. So what I have is a sample document. Is usually so every organization have their own process or procedure of writing a test plan. So this is just practically a sample documentation. I'm just going to be sharing with you. So basically, we have in our table of contents, we have the introduction, the purpose, and the introduction and purpose is just basically like a summary of what this project you're about to test contains of. Like if it's a single feature on a particular software application, you have to explain what this feature, the problem this feature aims to solve. And also, if it's an update on an existing feature, you just have to detailedly explain what this feature is speaking to. So after that, we have for the test strategy, we have our test objective, test assumptions, test principles, and data approach. Now, everything in chapter 2 is basically what the QA is going to need. Your test objective is basically telling you how it's going to tell you what types of testing is going to be done for the feature. If there's going to be any some kind of a regression plan put in place, or if there's going to be automations that will be done. Is it going to be is it just are we just going to be testing the UI or strictly API? And depending on the kind of feature we're working on, if it's something that speaks to other a third party application, it will all be documented in your test plan. So then we have execution strategy. Execution strategy involves the entry and exit criteria. So your entry criteria will have something like explaining the necessary steps and processes that need to have occurred before testing can even take place. One of these things are your test environments. So we know we have different kinds of environments. We have dev, staging, UAT, and production environments. And during testing, most organizations use staging or dev environment for testing. So we have to make sure that this environment is in stable condition, and the developers would have already built have already done their own work by building what they need to do on that particular environment before pushing it out to the QAs for testing. So all this will be documented, and that is what we have in our test plan. So let me just scroll down to show you how this document looks like. Sorry, I think I was scrolled. I don't know if I'm talking too fast. Does anyone have any question? Definitely have gone too far. Any questions so far, or should I continue? Hi guys, are we still here?
You can continue, sir.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So this particular test plan that I have open is speaking to the testing of the application Orange HRM. So at the end of this session, I'll be sharing this particular link where we're going to have to write a few test cases, nothing serious, but before that, I'll show you the what's it called, the format of a test case, which we're all going to use. So it's going to be really it's going to be a really engaging session. Don't worry, but it's not going to be boring. Okay, so now, just like I said in the beginning, the purpose. Now, this test plan describes the testing approach and overall framework that will drive the testing of Orange HRM version 3.0, myinfomodule.com sites. This document includes, you can see it's listed out the test strategy. The test strategy rules the test will be based on, including the givings of the project, start and end data, objective and assumptions. We have the execution strategy and also the test management process. So just like I said, we have a brief overview of what the project is talking about. They also give an audience like who are the end users expected to use this particular application. So next is where we need it. What is important to us QAs, the test strategy. So in the test strategy, we have our test objectives, which is basically the objective of what we wish to achieve for the testing purposes for this particular application. So as stated, it says the objective of this test is to verify the functionality of Orange HRM version 3.0, name of the website. Then the test will execute and verify the test script, identify, fix, and retest all high and medium severity defects by the entrance criteria, that is entry criteria. Prioritize low severity defects for future fixing via CRO. The final product of the test is in two folds. One, production-ready software and a set of stable test scripts that can be reused for functional and UAT test execution. So basically, what they're just saying is that before the ending, the objective of this whole test process is that we should have an application that is production ready for the end users to use, and we should have a detailed documented test script that can be picked up and used by any QA to also continue testing this particular application. So next we have our test assumptions, just a brief general of what the application is about, then the different types of functional testing that will be performed, the testing principles, the data approach. So that's your test data. Maybe if there are any DB that you need to also have access to. So here you usually have a list of the data that you needed. If you're working on a file mover application, maybe the list of files that you need, the types of files, and also maybe access to some specific servers that may or may not be required. So all that will be documented in your test data. So then next we have the functional test. We should just give a brief summary of what you want to achieve in your functional test and also your test acceptance criteria. Yeah, you just list out basically what you wish to achieve. You have your sign off and your readiness, then test deliverables. So your test deliverables, now these are the test deliverables. There is things that before the end of the whole testing phase, these are things that have been put in order, which is the test plan, your functional test case, your defect log, your status report, and your test closure reports. So all these are your test deliverables. Usually, the test plan is usually written by the QA manager, but it depends on how your organization is structured. It could be written by a senior QA or maybe like a team lead of some sort because he will be the one to dictate the processes at which the QAs should follow and the type of testing that should be done. I feel like I should pause. I don't know. Am I going too fast or do we have any question? Or is everybody following me up to this point? So Vicky, you have it. Okay, that's nice. Have a couple of reaction.
Ifoma has a question. Ifoma is raising her hand.
Oh, okay. So go ahead. Proceed your question.
Good afternoon.
Good
I'm sorry,
afternoon.
I feel like you're going too fast.
Okay. So where did you
I
lose me?
like what you're talking about the test strategy, test objectives, like I was like you're going too fast. And then you said something about QA manager. Sorry, if I may ask what's the like meaning?
What are you asking? What is a QA manager?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's usually like your line manager, just keep it like your line manager, someone that's superior to you, like the head of the QA department. So, like I said, the test plan, depending on your organization structure, it depends. So, in most, like, okay, for InterSwitch, for example, each QA write their own test plan for whatever application they are testing, right? But I've also worked in organizations whereby it's not just the it's not QAs that write their test plan. It's usually like a team lead or a senior QA officer that writes the test plan. So it depends on the structure of the organization. Then your other question, test strategy, right? So let me just simplify what test strategy is. Test strategy is just basically what kind of tools and what kind of process you wish to execute within this testing phase. So your test strategy can consist of, okay, am I going to perform API tests? Am I going to perform UI tests? Are there going to be automations? Am I going to perform performance tests? So all these are going to be captured within your test strategy. And if there's going to be need for any form of this testing, we have to ensure that it's detailedly documented. Like maybe if there are automation tests, you have to have access. You have to keep your links to your repository. If there's going to be any CI/CD automation, then there should be some kind of pipeline link. Anyway, there should be a link to point to that particular automation test suite. That's just basically what your test strategy entails. And also there's obviously going to be manual testing. So the test strategy should also entail on where we are going to document the manual test cases. So have I answered your question, or do you still have any other question? Hi,
Okay.
Daniel. Okay, sorry.
You've answered my question, but I was thinking this QA you've been mentioning, whether it has like a full meaning or it's just QA.
Sorry. Okay, QA. Are you asking for the full meaning of QA?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, my bad. QA means quality assurance. So that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, so quality assurance. We have a couple of hands raised. Daniel, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Sorry, I want to get you on the right path. Are you trying to say that is the work or job of a QA manager to write the test plan? Or I want to understand this part you are saying. You say
So,
something
like
like
I yes. So what I mean is that depending on the organization structure, right? So there are places whereby you, as a QA engineer, you need to write your test plan. While there are some places whereby it's your team lead or it's the QA manager that will write the test plan. That's just what I was trying to say. But in and all, right, a QA must know what a test plan contains. A QA must also be able to write a test plan because you could be called upon to write a test plan. But it's not compulsory that you would do the run to write your test plan. Does that answer the question?
yes, thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Is there any other question from any other person? Oh, lots of questions. Okay, yes. See your hands up. Okay, two hands. Three actually. Let's start with I may not pronounce your name well, but Adu. I think
Yeah,
was
good
yes,
afternoon, Adonye.
yes. Adu,
I
yes.
yes, I've been bamboozled with these test plans because one of the definition I saw was test plan is a high-level document that includes test strategy and
Mm-hmm,
description of required actions and
mm-hmm,
procedures to ensure that product or system meets its design specification. Now, underline test strategy. I think I'm
mm-hmm,
enjoying this election now. You talk about test strategy. You say test strategy talks about the type of test you want to carry, like API testing. Is it manual? Are you going to use manual? Are you going to use this other this? So now, how does on that key point again, the wrote here is this description of required actions. How can we fit in description of required actions? So I don't really, because I'm still trying to fit the pieces together.
Sorry, please, can you Can you rephrase your question? Let me understand. Let me know how I answer
Okay.
you.
I say test plan is a high
Mm-hmm.
level document that includes test strategy. You've
Mm-hmm.
explained the test strategy. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
and description of required actions and procedures
Mm-hmm.
to ensure
Mm-hmm.
that product or system meets its design specifications. So
Mm-hmm.
where will you equate this description of required actions? Where does that description of required action come into play?
Description of required actions. Okay.
Yes.
So I think from one point of view, I think what you're asking me is like, are you asking where are we going to put the different type of testing that should be done? Is that what you're asking?
No, that's not really what I'm asking. Like I said, one test plan description definition I read is it's a high test
Mm-hmm.
plan is a high level document that includes test
Mm-hmm.
strategy. You've
Mm-hmm.
explained this test strategy for me already. Like you said that test strategy is like what type of test to carry out. Is it API testing,
Mm-hmm.
mixture of
Mm-hmm.
API testing, manual testing, and others? So where will we
Mm-hmm.
put this description of required actions?
So yes, it's going to fall under the test strategy section of your test plan,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Yes, that's
okay,
where it's going to fall under. So okay, I think I
okay.
understand your question now. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Olivia, your hands are up. Do you have any question?
No, it's not really a question. I just wanted you to please, like, in the simplest words, like, try to, like, just explain in the simplest words. I'm following, but sometimes I'm lost.
Okay.
Yes, please just explain it like in the dumbest way so that I don't know if any other person is struggling, but I'm
Oh,
yeah, like I'm not I understand the gist of it, but when we're using the terms that have to do with software testing, I'm not very familiar with them yet. So I like after classes I have to
okay.
go back, Google, watch YouTube videos to, bring myself up to speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No problem. I think I will for your own concern, and I think for the concern of everybody else, I'll go afresh. But let me just answer every other person's question. Then I'll just take it afresh and just explain. I'll re-explain it in as simple as possible.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So I don't know if James has any. He had, I think James had a question. Yes, James, your hands are up. Hi, James. Oh,
Hi, thank you so much so far. I was wondering,
yes.
can a test plan be inaccurate? By all means, can a test plan be inaccurate? And if yes, what might have happened that would make a test plan to be accurate? Apparently, I mean, if it is, then the results will be different, right? But can a test plan ever be inaccurate? And who vets the test plan? So, like you explained, depending on the structure of the organization, some team members are allowed to write out their own test plans, and I'm sure they can also write out their own test cases, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so can a test plan be inaccurate?
Yes, a tester can be inaccurate in the sense that the information provided are wrong. Maybe, for example, the feature to be tested was captured incorrectly, or probably the environment that was tested was incorrect. They didn't specify the correct environment to be tested. Then maybe the test data that was also provided in that test plan was also wrong. So there are many things that could be wrong about it. So usually, right, when if in an organization where a QA has to write their own test plan, right, it's usually, there's usually someone that reviews that test plan. Like maybe a superior will usually review that test plan to make sure that all information placed in that test plan are correct. And once the reviewer is satisfied with the content of that test plan, they'll approve that test plan documentation. If they're satisfied, they'll probably send it back to the QA to go and make some modification on the test plan. So yes,
Thank you.
a test plan, yes, a test plan
Yes,
can be incorrect.
my point exactly, because someone should be somewhere to review test plans or validate,
Yes.
all right, the correctness of a test plan, right? But The second one, why make assumptions on test plans? What's the how do I put it? What's the function of making an assumption for a test plan? Because if we are setting of all the parameters, so why still add some elements of assumption? Is there a special reason for that?
So this is a sample test plan, right? This is just something that I just got offline. For specific reason, I can't just share you my own company's test plan, right? I decided to just share so online. So in as much as yes, this is a valid test plan documentation, but it's not everything that is in here that will be in a test plan. I don't know if you get. Usually, a company has their own has how do I say this, like structured document whereby you just need to fill in all the information in it. And you may not even see things like this: test objective, test assumptions, test principles, data approach. You may not see any of these guys, but it's also good to understand what each of these things means. So, because if you call, you could, because most of the question that I usually ask during a Q interview is what entails a test plan. Explain what you understand from what a test plan is. That is like a compulsory question they ask in all interviews. Like besides after introducing yourself, the next follow-up question is what do you understand by a test plan? What are the key elements in a test plan? Key elements in the test plan. You have to have your entry criteria, you have to have your exit criteria, you have to have your test strategy, your test approach, your test objective. These are key. There are others, but these are key things that must be in your test plan. You can't call it a test plan if you don't have like an entry criteria or an exit criteria, and maybe you have all these other grammar. That I would like to use the word grammar, like you have your test principles, you have all this and all that, but you don't have the key important things. So you don't really need to just pay so much attention to to these test assumptions. Like I said, this is just a sample document from online. I'm sure if after this class you can just go online and just search out different test plans, and you see they are all different from what I'm showing you. You see things that you will not even you'll be asking yourself, why is it in this? Why is this particular field here? But like I said, it depends on the structure of the organization and how they articulate their own test plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Is there any other question from any other person?
Victor's hand is raised, but I wanted to say let's continue. Then Victor, you ask later. Does that work?
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm actually owing Olivia and everybody to explain this again.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. So, in the simplest form of what Tesla is. So, now imagine that you've been asked to test, you've done your sprint planning, you've done your requirement gathering and all that. Now it's time to do the deed. It's time to test your application. You can't just go and just start testing, right? There must be a process. Not everybody's going to just start testing from left to right, up to down. There'll be no orderliness. So now someone will come and say, okay, let's have a plan. Let's know what we're going to start with. Let's know what we're even going to test. Okay, fine. We have let's use an e-commerce website, right? We are supposed to test an e-commerce website end to end. But the key things we're going to test that is just going to be login, raising of sales order, and checkouts. Fine. There's other features like delivery and maybe funding of wallets. But for this testing purpose, we are only going to be testing login, raising of order, and checkout. These are the three things we're going to prioritize. The others will come in the next stage of testing. Now we have agreed that we're going to test those three features, right? What do? We need to write a clear set of objectives. Okay, we know that we're going to test these three features. What should be the goal at the end of the whole testing phase? The goal should be that user should be able to log in with correct details. The user should be able to raise an order of an order that's available to him in his cart, and the user should be able to check out with that order. Objectives. Now, what's next? Test cases must be written, right? You document the data that's going to be imputed in that test case. Now, data can be like your login credentials, maybe access to the API documentation, your access to DB, so that in case if you want to do a little bit of database testing, you need access to that. Those are your test data. You put it into your documents. Now, what's the next thing now? Okay, entry criteria. Entry criteria is even before testing we start, gone, meaning that everything must be ready. Is our environment ready? If no, we cannot start testing. The QA manager or the team need to say, sorry, testing cannot occur until the environment is ready and stable. Not the one they will give QA, an environment where it's haphazard. They just to even log it, they're not even seeing the URS, not even calling. So expecting that you must have a working URL that we should be able to test on, not something that people are still half baked, right? Now, that's your entry criteria. Your exit criteria is okay. When do we when do we say that we are done testing? At how many percentage of test coverage should we have achieved before we say testing is done? Okay, good. We know we are going to write our test cases for this module, right? Maybe let's say we have a total of 100 test cases for these 3 modules, right? So test close, you can say that until at least 95% of these test cases have passed status, we are not giving our sign off. Now, once we have done our test, and once we have done our test execution, once testing is done, if the test coverage, like there's a way to calculate that. I think I'll look for how and I'll share it and also explain that. So if our test coverage is below that set amount, we are not going live. We'll have to make sure we fix the remaining issues, no matter how minimal they are, right? Because it is below our set test coverage matrix. Now, that's for the exit criteria. Test strategy. What kind of testing are we doing? Are we just only doing manual testing, or are we doing manual and automation, or is it just automation testing? Are we going to do performance testing to check how the system can handle stress? Is there going to be a form of CI? Is there going to be a form of regression test suite in order? So after we're done testing and after we're done automating, if they want to make an additional feature on that, an additional improvement, or maybe not to add something to the system, it should not break the already existing working process. All that to be captured in the test strategy aspect of the test plan. Is there any question from anyone?
I think we can continue. None at the moment.
Okay, all right. So, yes, test strategy. Then you also document your what's the next thing now? I think here you have to also document your defects. So in your test plan, you have to also prioritize your test closure. So your test summary report. Yes. Your test summary reports. So in your test summary report, it should be detailedly explained if there are any blocker and if there are any things you let into product environment. Maybe there are a low severity bug. Like for the principle of testing, you can't always have a a system that is 100% bug free, right? Now, there are some instances, maybe because of timelines, whereby you allow a very low severity and priority bug into production. Maybe like the color of a button or the positioning of a button. These are very low priority issues, defects, right? And because you have a deliverable at a particular date, so you don't want to come and fill that deliverable just because of a minor issue. So you're going to also document that in your test plan. Already, you'd have already created a defect for that, but it should also be captured in your test plan. Now, another key note is a test plan is not a static document. It's a document that can be edited throughout the entire test phase, right? So it's not something that, oh, you create your test plan and you don't edit it again. No, the test plan is created just to guide everyone. In the guidance of the testing phases, and we can usually go back to the test plan to make some little updates here and there. So that is the simplest way I can explain a test plan. Is there any question?
Yes, we have double grace. Double grace. I have a
Oh,
question.
okay.
Hand is up.
Hi, double grace.
I think we can continue if he's not muting.
Okay, so
Thank
we'll move. All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the next phase, which is test case. Yes, the test case, which can be QA's nightmare sometimes, but it's necessary. Because test case can save you when it's needed, but test case involve a lot of documentation. And it's not fun. I won't lie to you. It's not something anyone. Some people enjoy writing test cases. I don't enjoy writing test cases, but yes, we have to do them. It's important. Okay, so let me just share a sample test case. This is just something I just created few minutes ago, actually. But let me just show you what a test case is about, how a test case document should be. So, hello, is there any
So
question?
sorry for that. No, no question. I think someone mistakenly unmuted the mic.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. So I'm going to, so I think what I'll do is I'll simply explain what test cases are. Then I will now go into a detailed explanation of what test case is. Test case. What is test case? Test case is just and it's just like it's just an instruction, right? You follow to execute a test. That's the simplest way to explain it. What is a test script? Test script is a document that consists of numerous test cases. That is what a test script is. So the whole of this sample test case is a test script. If I were to have a test case here, this particular line would be my test case. Then we also have test scenario. So they all sound alike, but they are not alike. The first one is test case. I said test script, then test scenario. Now, what is a test scenario? A test scenario is just basically is a scenario based is how okay, let me what's the best can I explain test scenario? Um okay, I would say a test scenario is just like so you know that your test case is your instruction. So now before you get your instructions or what on how you should test, you have to think about what you want to test. So test scenario is just like you thinking about, oh, what am I going to test? How what do I want to achieve? Right? Once you know what you want to achieve, then you now know the instruction you want to set out. The instruction you want to give, right? So you need to know your test scenario. Then after once you have gotten your test scenarios down, you write the instruction, which is the test cases for your test scenario. And in a proper test case documentation, it should have each of these fields. One, your test case ID, which is used for easy tracking, your Jira issue number. So some organization uses as your board. So it might not be Jira. You can call it your whatever form of task management people are using. So you can just replace this instead of Jira. You can put as your issue tickets or anything you want to call it. Then TC name is test case name. Now this is where you're going to call the name of the test case, like the name of the instruction. Then we have your action and description. Your action and description is the process of how to execute this test case. For example, we could have a test case called login with invalid credentials. Now, your action and your description would say login with, you can verify, okay, so no, your test case name will be like verify that user is not able to log in with invalid credential. Now, your action is user logs in, user opens the portal and inputs an invalid username and password and clicks on login. What is the next step? What is the next step? Your expected result. Expected result is basically what you expect the system to behave normally. That's so before even writing your test case, you should even have a good understanding of your what you are testing. You can't write test cases without understanding what you are testing. If not, you just write a bad test case, and or you not write a detailed test case, like to not capture what is meant to be captured, right? So now, an expected result for that particular instance of where you're logging in with an invalid credential is user should not be able to log in with an invalid credential, or the system should throw an error message saying incorrect user credentials. So that's what they're expecting from the system. But the actual result is what happens. So actual result is what you are seeing, is what you're going to document, right? For example, if an instance, like what's the on the logging in with an invalid credential, right? So you try logging with an invalid credential, but you're able to access the system. So that means you're going to say the system allowed the user to have access to the system with an invalid credential. Now, what's the test status? So that is not what you expect, right? So for you to know what your QA test status is, it means that a pass means that your expected results is equal to your actual results. So if you expect that the system should show an error message saying user attempted to log in with an invalid credential, and that is what you saw. So you can say yes, user attempted to the system prevented the user from logging in with an invalid credential. Your test status would be a pass. But if the actual result was that user was able to log in with an invalid credential, then your test status would be failed. Then here is where you keep your comments. Maybe there are some tests that might have that's still on pending, maybe due to some kind of configuration issue or something that's beyond your control. So you can have a pending status, right? Because you are yet to test it. And you keep a comment for the reason why you are yet to test it. Then next is your test date, your the date tested. That is the date you wrote your test case and also executed your test. The name of the developer who is working on the project, the name of the QA who tested that particular feature, and the test type. So your test type could be automation, or it could be a manual test, a test type, right? So these last four fields are important for audit purposes when you're performing your SQA audit. So that is basically what a test case is in the simplest definition. Is there any question before I go more detailed into the technical parts?
Yes, I think we have a question. You have just called SQA. Victor is raising his hand, and I guess they don't know the meaning of SQA.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, Phoenix. So I want to ask in the action or design column, like you said that you mentioned that okay, user logs in with an invalid username or password. Now, in that case, I need to impute the incorrect username and password in the description, or we just put that the user logs in with an invalid username and password.
So that is where your test plan comes to play. Remember, your test plan also consists of test data, right? So you put all your test data in your test plan. So if there should ever be any need for any credential of any sort to be located in your test plan. But it's nothing wrong with also imputing the credentials that you use to test, so that any QA that wants to pick it up can also use that same credentials to also get that same outcome. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Is there any other question besides the one of what an FQA audit is? Okay, hi. I think Abigail. Or who else raised their hands?
Chima.
Okay, Shima, you have a question.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, and my question is, you say something about the comments. That the comment is, I just rephrase the comment back because I don't understand the comment section. I want you to rephrase it back for me, please. Thank you.
So comments, right? Just basically your QA comments. Like maybe, for example, you're testing a particular feature and you don't like the outcome, but for whatever reasons, you have to there are multiple scenarios that can lead to write a comment. A comment is just what you want to leave on this document, so that any QA is picking this thing up and sees that, oh, why is this thing passed when this thing is not passed? You have a comment saying that this thing is not meant to pass because of so reason, and it's still under pending paper document. Or maybe you have a pending status. You can leave a comment that this is not yet tested because of configuration issues that are still pending. So you just a comment is just something you just need to leave behind. But if you don't have a need to write a comment, you can leave it blank. Comment is not compulsory. It's not compulsory that every test case should have a QA comment. Just something that you just feel is necessary to put in, so that anybody that's picking up your document, your test case, would understand what you're trying to achieve and why you perform a certain kind of action. Does that answer? Okay, yeah. All right. Still it thumbs up. Okay. Yes. Charles, you have a question.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
All right, I have a question, a quick one. My question is are there differences or are there different requirements or different processes when testing different softwares? Like as a developer, sometimes we could build a mobile application, right? We have standalone
Mm-hmm.
applications, we have web-based platform
Mm-hmm.
applications, we have progressive applications, so we have game applications. So are there different um, software testing requirements or mechanisms for each application, or do they all follow the same blueprint?
So, okay. So to answer your question, I'll just simply say one word: test strategy. So that's where you keep test strategy. Whatever form of testing you want to perform on any application, whether it's a game application, whether it's a casino, a bet application, whatever kind of application you're going to end up testing, is the process on how the testing phase what the processes that will be involved in testing will be kept in your test strategy section on your test plan. I don't know if that answers your question the way you want it to be answered.
Um, yeah, I get that. I guess you, but so are you saying they're all the same blueprints, but the blueprints will now be defined in the test strategy?
So when you say blueprint, let me even get your question well. Like, are you saying, for example, now a mobile application, right? You need to install the mobile application before testing. So the processes to installing the mobile application is what needs to be captured. Or is there any other question you have? Or is that what you're asking? Sorry.
Yes, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And
like
yes,
like
again.
for mobile application now, let's assume maybe I'm using an iOS device, right? And then maybe I want to use maybe on my Visual Studio Code, like install an emulator, or maybe I have to use a live device. Then when it comes to like game application, maybe I'm using maybe Unity 3D, for example. Okay, this is what you need to have like a minimum requirement to actually test this application, or maybe a web-based application. So, or do they have like one common general roadmap, like okay, for every application you're testing, this step one must be step one, step two must be step two, step three must be step three, or does it change based on the application or the kind of software you're kind of testing? I don't know if my question makes sense.
Yeah, your question makes sense perfectly. And still the same answer. It's still going to be documented in your test strategy. So now, for example, right, you just mentioned something about testing an iOS application and you're using your visuals, you're using your Xcode to emulate the application. Now, the QA can decide that, okay, look, one of the entry criteria to testing is that we should have a live iOS, an iOS device for actual testing. So depending on the kind of application you're testing, if depend on the kind of application you're testing, there's some application that it doesn't really matter if you use an emulator, but just to get because users are not going to use emulator, they're going to use their actual devices, right? So definitely it must be captured in your test strategy that before testing can occur, we need to have an iOS device to install the application and perform the test activities. So all that to be captured in your test strategy, the test plan. So, and yes, just to not to say too much on your question. It's not compulsory. Every application is different, right? You have mobile application, you have web application, you have APIs that you just need to just integrate, right? And all these things that need to be tested have their own unique way and approach and strategy to testing. You cannot expect the test strategy for a mobile application to be the same test strategy for an API. No, an API, you need to have Postman installed. You need to perform API tests. The mobile application, you need to have the actual device to run your test on it. So your test strategy would differ based on the products or based on the software you're actually testing. Okay, so I saw a couple of hands up. I don't know. I lost track of them. Any other question? Okay, yeah, I can see Victor. Victor, you have a question?
Okay, I want to know, like, do test cases differ for manual and automation testing? Like, are there different cases for the two types of testing methods?
That's an interesting question. Okay, so I really wish I could share my test scripts. So it's not really different. The difference I would say is how you explain this action and description, right? So for example, we're still on the let's use the UI aspect now, right? So from the UI's point of view, your description for writing a test case that speaks to logging in with an invalid credential is simple, right? So you're going to perform action. You're going to input an invalid password and username and password, and you click on the login button and you inspect the response, right? That is manually doing all those steps. But if you're going to like perform, if you're going to write a test case for an API for that login feature, right? Where you're just testing the API. Now you're not testing the UI, you're testing the API, right? So it's going to be like you're going to send a post request. So in sending your post request, you're going to actually specify the kind of data you're going to pass in the body of that post request. I don't want to dive too much into automation testing because I feel there'll be a session that will cover all that, and that will also explain that as well.
Okay.
So we're just think, okay.
Okay, I just wanted to mention if you can give two different examples of same test case. So they also see the difference between the UI and automation. For example, the invalid password you just mentioned. You can just
Okay.
give them example of just a test case and then for UI and for same for UI and for API.
Okay.
Just
So
maybe
just like I was
write it, everybody will follow, like everybody will do it together and then they see the difference. I think it's be more this thing understand they will understand it a bit better.
okay. Okay. So okay, I get that makes sense. But I think I still have some other questions from people. Should we answer that or should we just go on to the practical aspect?
Daniel, do you have any question? Daniel, you're not supposed to ask any questions, but do you have any questions? Because we've answered you 5 times now. Daniel, you can go on.
Okay, so I have this question that okay, the question is when you're writing when we're writing our test cases, we have to write our positive and negative test cases too, depending on
Mhm.
the whatever we're working on. So, like, what is the right balance between writing positive test cases, like, verifying what the system is supposed to do, and like the negative test cases, checking how it handles errors and stuff like that? Like, are there scenarios where uh, like one is important than the other?
Mm.
So, yeah, that's my question.
Both are important, right? But I would say depending on the feature you're working on, like if you're working on something as sensitive as that involve make payments, let's say payment for example, maybe payment of funds, you want to try to prioritize as much negative test cases as possible, right? Now, because since we have to do with payments, right, you need to go as crazy as possible. Think of crazy scenarios. That is basically it. Because users can be very, very funny. They will never use your application the normal way you expect them to use your application. The application can be as straightforward as just putting the number, the correct number, and putting your PIN and make payments for your order. But the user can just go ahead to put maybe he places an order for 200 naira. He goes ahead to place to write 199.9999999 naira. That's not 200 naira. That is short of 0.1 kobo or whatever, right? But how the system going to react to it? Because if you allow that to fly, right? Who's going to pay for that 0.1 kobo? Is it going to be from your pocket or is it going to be from the company's pocket? And that is just for one user. Imagine if 1 million or 10 million users just do the same thing overnight. That's like losing like at least =1 million naira because 0.1 kobo times the owes plenty users. As you have lost =1 million naira. So for very, very sensitive features, you want to prioritize more as much negative tests as possible. Then why for features that are more on the non-functional aspects, right? You want to prioritize more on positive case test cases, like anything that has to do with UI design, like button positioning and all that. You also want to verify that yes, the button is placed in the correct aspect, the color is as specified from what was given to you in the Figma design, all that and all that. But functional test cases, you want to prioritize more on the negative aspect so that the system will not break and so that users will not mess not really mess up the system, but users will not have users will not have a leeway to manipulate the system or to hack the system, so to say. Does that answer your question, Daniel?
Yeah, answer the question. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to get a bit more practical. I hope that we are all on our system. So please, can we open a new Excel document and just have at least just these headings, right? These are just the headings I just want us to have. So we can all just follow along. I'm just going to write just going to write two test cases, just one that is positive, one that is negative. And we'll be using do I still have that website open? So let me look for where is that website? So I'll look for the website, but let's just write out these headings. Then for this tester part, it would be nice for you to write your name. I just write your name as a tester because we are all QAs. Even if some of us are not yet working, some are aspiring to land a job. Just speak faith into it. This Sunday. So let's practice what you learned from church. Then put in your test type. Just it's going to be manual. We're not going to do anything automation, so just manual. Then developer can put your best friend or your worst enemy's name in here. Just put anybody that you like or don't like. Then date, put your date. So the only thing we're going to leave empty is your test case name, actual description, expected result, actual results, your QA test status, and your QA comments. But please, I need the last four to be filled up. Just put in your friend name, your name, and manual tests. So I don't know if you can quickly do that in like 5 minutes. Let me look for a random website for us to test to play with.
Is it possible to download it and send to me so that I will just send it to the group chat?
That will take away the fun of them typing and putting it. But okay, no problem.
Oh, yeah, true. Just leave it true. True. Thank you.
So let's get to the nitty-gritty of writing the wonderful document called test cases. So in exactly 5 minutes, we'll continue. Let me look for a website for us to, you know what, let's use Amazon. Amazon is a very popular website. I think everyone uses. Or no, let's use Jumia. Let's bring it more local. Let's make it more local to us. Let's use Jumia. They don't to log me out. Okay, good. Mm. No, I need something that uses username and passwords for something else.
Someone suggested you use Facebook.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. There is Facebook. When else did I ever open Facebook? I'm getting notification that someone has a question. Do we have any question or is there any confusion?
Not necessarily a question, but I was going to ask if as a developer we have our own platform, can we suggest it so you guys can test it to us?
So you want free
For
service?
now,
You want free
for now,
service?
no.
Like a
No.
free like a free test.
So you want
Charles,
to
for now,
use all the
no.
QAs here?
You
You want to
can
use all
talk
the
to David
QAs
about
here?
it later.
Oh, I blocked now. Facebook, have you blocked me? Okay, no problem. We'll just use this login password. Then we have our login button. Good. Much better. So is are we done with the documentation?
Guys, if you're done with the
Hello.
document, give emoji.
Please, what is the link to the documentation? Please, I didn't get the link.
There's
No,
no
no,
link.
no. So well, there's no link. So you have to do it on your own end. So you just open an Excel sheet and just type in these headers. That's just it. You can decide to use
All
any color you want.
right, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hi, I see someone hands up. Do you have a question?
Yes, good afternoon. You said we should just fill only the last four columns like date tested, developer, tester, and test type, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. I hope we're all able to follow up. Is there anyone struggling, or should we just continue? And maybe after the end of the class, you can just try to just do the practical on your own time. Okay. All right, no problem. So let's just continue. So our topic of target today is Facebook. We'll be testing Facebook login page. So what can we see when when we look at this? We can see two fields, email address or phone number. We can see passwords. So email address or phone number as speaks to us that you can either use an email address or a phone number. That means only a valid email address or a valid phone number can be used with the correct passwords to log in. So if you log in with all fields empty, out of Facebook, it's going to show now. So exactly. So Facebook will give us an error message saying the email address or phone number you entered isn't correct, isn't connected to an account. Find your account and log in. This is really long, but it's detailed. If I was the queue, I would not have let this error message fly. It's too long. So then let's try something now. Let's put in a valid phone number or an email. Let's use test. Now we have a valid email. So what does an email consist of? An email consists of the at and the domain, meaning that an email must have this at sign, the domain, and the I think what they call the end, whether it's .com or .org. So we all know QA.team. QA.team is a temp mail, just like where we have Yelp mail and Sharklist. And see, this is a production environment, definitely to flag it. So let's just use the actual gmail.com instead. So this is not a real email address, or it could be a real email address, but I don't have access to this email address. But Facebook could not throw an error message for the email this time. But this time around, we're going to leave the password field empty. Let us see the kind of error message we're going to get. So as you can see, we have a different error message now. So it's unlike the previous error message that we saw that was speaking to only just this email or phone number. Now we have an error message saying the password that you entered is incorrect. Forget passwords. So it's suggesting you to either forget your password or put in a valid password for these credentials. So already now we've already done two test cases now. What we did was with empty credential, that is both empty user, empty email, and an empty password. So let's try another test case. I'm going to also document this. I'm going to do 3 steps, right? And I'm also going to document it on that test cases, on that by test case. So let me just like as I've instructed you guys, let me just put in my name. Developer, let's use Henry. We're doing manual test. So what's today's date? This date is 13th. All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Right. So exactly what I just asked you guys to do, just to put your dates, developer's name, your tester name, which is yourself, the QA that's testing this particular project, and trying to make this guy happy. Yeah. And the date and the test type that we are going to be running for this particular feature. Okay, good. That's it. So now, what's our test case ID? So we'll just call it TS 1.0. That's our first test case. Then for this Jira, since we don't have a Jira ticket, we'll just leave it on blank. Then our test case name is, let's just say verify. Well, okay, so now we have our test case name, which is verify the user is unable to log in with an empty email. So then what are our steps? I'm going to use one instead. Sometimes this thing. Okay, so this is our first test case, right? So just like I explained, we have our test case theme, our action description, and our expected results. So just imagine we've not performed the action, right? So we pick up a document, we see this test case. The test case theme is verify that user is unable to log in with an empty email. What are the steps? So like, what are the action that you need to take? One, open the Facebook web page. Two, leave the email feed empty. Three, click on the login button. Four, inspect page. What are we expecting the outcome to be? The system should display an error message preventing the user from logging into the system. Okay, good. So what we're going to do, we're going to execute this test case. We've done that before, but let's just do it again. So, like we said, the first thing is open the Facebook web portal. We've done that. We'll leave our email field empty. The next is click on the login button. So when we click on the login button, just as expected, we have an error message which states this, and it's also preventing the user from logging into the system. So what is going to be our actual results? Remember that our test status, if when it's passed, it means that our expected result is equal to our actual result. So just there's the system. So instead of using should, the system displays. We are just trying to inform that system displays an error message preventing the user from logging into the system. Then we'll have our past status. So you can, like I said, it's not compulsory you have a QA comment. To do the QA comments, then we have our date tested, we have the developer, we have the QA, and we have the test type, which was manual test that was done. So do we have any question on this particular test case that was written? Please, I hope I'm not muted since okay, I'm not muted. Okay, we have, I think someone has what's up. I'm not seeing the hands again. Do we have any question?
I don't think so.
It's
Vic-
Linus Vicky's hand says up.
oh, okay. Linus, do you have what's your question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, can we also include the error message in the actual result
Yes,
to
yes, you
show what
can.
the error message is?
So are you referring to the just the error message you just want, right?
Yeah, just the error message. No,
So if
like
we're going to include it,
after writing, like yeah, after writing the system displays an error message, do we still like maybe in brackets include the particular what exactly the error message is into this? Is it necessary?
yes, it is. It is. So I'm just doing this just because oh no, I'm hearing myself in someone's mic. Okay. Okay. I think it's better now. So I'm just doing this just because of time. I still have some other things I want to talk about. So actually, we're meant to make this expected result is meant to be more detailed. It's supposed to say the system should display an error message. Then you keep in quotes. You should always indicate the particular error message. But that is, like I said, this particular system, the error message is quite long. If I were the QA that tested this project, I would suggest a shorter error message, like email address should not be empty, just short and simple and straightforward. Because if we have that now, it's going to make our test case very bulky. This is just one test case. I imagine we have 100 test cases that's as bulky as this. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So does that answer your question? Okay, yeah. Let me just do that for the actual results. I think there are still other questions. Is there another question again? Let me just
I'm
close
here.
my
Good afternoon. Um,
Good
so
afternoon.
you said that okay, you should have given us more scenarios because of your time. But now, in the event that probably in a real world experience, probably the project is let me say is for 3 days. So how do you prioritize the test scenarios in that case, since you don't have enough time for the project?
So the project is 3 days, right? Before the start of the project, your test case should have been ready. So yes. So definitely everything we're doing here, right, should have been done even before you start testing officially. So like I said, that's also one of the entry criteria. Your test case documentation is ready and complete in real world sense. So before testing actually occurs, you must have documented your test cases. Definitely you to not have your actual results. Your actual results and your test status and your QA test status will be empty. Or you should have your test case ID, your ticket, your test case name, because in your ticket is where you have your acceptance criteria. So you must have a ticket that you're working with, and also for you to track how far you're working and things you have covered, right? So it must have your test case name, the actual description, and the expected results. The actual result and the test status will be empty until when you are executing the test. So I'm just put this guy out. So before testing would have and we have started now, you have something like this. But instead of just one test cases, you'd have like maybe up to like 100 test cases capturing different scenarios. So once it's time for you to start testing, you pick up your test case of your test script and you start. The first one, verify user is unable to log it with an empty email. You go and execute it on the website, right? So you already know your expected results. Is it equal to your actual results? You come and write it. This if it's equal to, then if you have a pass status. But if you have something like the user is able to log in with invalid credential, then that is a failed status. So to answer your question, for if you have 3 days before the one or out of your 3 days have started, you have finished your doing your test cases. That is the right practice. I don't know if that answers your question, or is there another question again?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, Victor. Are there any other question from anyone?
Yeah, sorry, I do have a question.
All right.
Okay, so are there situations whereby a media file will be required for a test case? Let's say, for example, you're trying to test out something, and then you've noticed, from past experience that sometimes you test this and you get the error message, and then the next time you test it, it works. So it's not like a syntax error, but more like a logical error. For some reason, you don't know why it's like that. So is there any reason whereby maybe you want to, maybe at a particular time when you saw the error message, you're like, maybe let me just save this stuff, maybe like screenshot it, right? Because I never can tell if next time it won't be there, and then present it like an evidence or something. I mean, there was something like that happens, in QA.
So yes, that is called defect reporting. So when creating your defect, you have to have your screenshot as evidence. You also need to have captured your steps to reproduce that defect, because there are, so not going to like, there's some defects that are not straightforward, right? So there are times where it could work because of a particular conditions. Then there's something like it could that particular feature could work and that feature could not work. There are times it work maybe due to configuration issues, or maybe overloading the system, right? Maybe you are trying to upload a file, or maybe you're performing maybe you're running performance tests on the system with multiple users. And you notice that whenever you use above 15 users, the system throws a 503 error message that is preventing the functionality of the feature, right? So you take your screenshots and you also inform the developer to see how they can improve the resources on the system, so that the system can also be able to accommodate more users or more stress and loads. So yes, that is for defect reporting. Just to answer your question. I think I have another question from Dumebi. Hi, Dumebi.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much so far. So you mentioned something about Jira and acceptance criteria. You said something about
Yes.
the Jira tickets, that's where criteria will be. So I just wanted to speak on that. I don't understand. Like you've not said anything about that. So
Okay. That's not supposed to be covered in this class, but ideally, before you even start testing, your product owner would have documented the feature in the ticket, right? So, and in that ticket, it should have its acceptance criteria. So, acceptance criteria basically things that is the ex is the expected outcome of the feature that the developer is working on. So, and it's also what you should build your test cases based on. But it's not, you're not only going to build your test case based on only acceptance criteria. So that's why you need to think out of the box. Fine, your product manager will give you a list of acceptance criteria that you should follow. You should prioritize those, but you should also think of others others criteria that you need, that you as a QA should also bring to the system, because QA is not just about finding bugs, right? QA is also about improving the overall system and producing a high quality software so that users can enjoy whatever you're working on. So yes, maybe I think later on we'll talk about that. I'll just speak to the facilitator about that. So yes, that's where you get your acceptance criteria from. Is there any other question?
So sorry on that, right? So let's say you said we're not going to build our test cases only on the acceptance criteria. So in a situation whereby maybe because as QAs, like we go outside the box, we think of other cases. How do we write the Jira ticket for such that maybe it's not part of the acceptance criteria?
Sorry, can you ask the question again? I couldn't really hear you well.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so I said that out of the situation whereby we think outside of the box and then we get like test cases that are not part of any acceptance criteria. In such a case, how do we report it? Like, what's the Jira ticket we can use for something like that?
Okay, no. So I understand your concern now. So it's not like anything you think out, you go and write it somewhere. So that's why you have your test scripts, right? Every acceptance criteria or everything you think of that should be in the system must be documented on your test in your test cases, right? Remember, your test case is the instruction. So whatever you're thinking about is like a scenario, which is your test scenario. So for you to execute that instruction, you have to to execute that scenario, you have to write an instruction, which is your test case. So it's not like you okay, maybe you think maybe for example now, just we have this login now, right? And let's imagine that on the acceptance criteria, it only specified that we're only using email address and passwords. It did not specify we're using phone number. But it was discussed during sprint planning that we're going to use email address or phone number. But the product manager did not include phone number. But developer but during the Figma design and all that, you're still seeing phone number. So you as a QA know that definitely we need to have email or phone number. So even if the developer does not capture the use case of adding a phone number, you need to remind the developer that look, it's not only email address you can use to log into this application. You can also use phone number. Yes, it's not captured on the acceptance criteria, but it's necessary. It's what we have to go like. But sometimes you could have some stubborn developers that will argue that it's not captured the acceptance criteria, so I'm not going to work on it. In that very case, you go and speak to the product manager to go and properly update the ticket to capture that particular acceptance criteria just for documentation purposes. Okay, I think Abigail, you have a question.
Okay, I wanted to ask my question since, but I was just kind of, I don't know, I was kind of skeptical about asking it. Okay, when we talk about software testing in general, I want
Mhm.
to understand because now you just said something about acceptance criteria. My question was all about that initially. So, let's say like when a QA tester is trying to test a software, let's say for example, it could be it could be e-commerce, e-tech, anyone.
Mhm.
Is it just the probably the login, the payment gateway they do test for, or they do test for in terms of the UX flow and the acceptance criteria? So I want to understand what like do they also test for probably the UX flow, and also at the end of the UX flow where the user is able to accomplish this in terms of the acceptance criteria.
So
So
yes, yes, they do. Just like I said, right? QA is not just about finding bugs, right? Because if you find bugs now, there are some instances you could notice that a system needs to be improved, right? So you have to use your professionalism to call that out for such improvements. Fine, sprint planning was done, the Figma design is done and ready, but at the point of testing, realize that this particular flow is not the best. That you feel that this will be a better way to achieve this particular process. You call it off because after all, you are the gates, you are the gatekeeper between the users and the tech team, right? And all that's protecting. So your best interest should be of the users, right? You want them to have a seamless experience using the application you work on. So it's not just about finding bugs that, oh, this button is not working, this functionality is not working, this color is incorrect. No, no, that's not meant to be a QA. A QA also improves the process and the overall experience. So for example, now if you notice that yes, the process is correct, it's working fine, right? Maybe you're able to click on add an item to a cart. Let's use an e-commerce website, for example, right? You're able to add an e-commerce website, you're able to add an item to your cart. But you notice that every time you want to add another item, you need to like start afresh. The cart is not saving each item. It's not like it's doing it in a manual way. So it's until you have to click one, pay for one, right? Which works, right? The whole functionality of that feature is for you to be able to pay for the order. But you as a queue will be like, okay, why don't we not have a feature that saves the cart somewhere? Maybe for example, if a user clicks on an item, maybe you want to buy a biro, you click on add biro, you add that to your cart. You go back, click on pencil, add pencil to your cart. You go back, you click on book, add book to your cart. Now you have three items in your cart, and you can place order for the three items at the same time. In as On the contrary of just going to click on bio, you have to pay for bio first. Going to click on book, you have to pay for a book first. Click on pencil, which is stressful. It's correct, but it's stressful. There should be a better way to improve it. So that's all those things will be captured during your form of testing, and also if there is time or depending on the severity of that outcome, it could be worked on within your particular sprint, or it could be carried on as an improvement um for a later date. So yes, does that answer your question? Maybe I think so. Maybe that's that question.
It's Abigail. It does.
Sorry, Abigail.
Sorry,
Yes,
Abigail.
yes.
Yes, yes. It does.
All right.
Okay. I also need like clarity. For example, now you're building. Let's say as a product manager, you're building. Let me just use an e-commerce since you've been using e-commerce for a while,
All right.
and all right. Probably at a point the I want to know at what point should a QA tester come in. Let me not go let me not try to explain the storyline. But at what point do QA tester comes in? At what point is it when the whole development process is over or is completed, or at what stage? Because there's a situation I'm in right now, so I don't want to know at what stage should a QA tester come in.
Okay. I like that question. I'll give you two answers to that question: official and unofficial answer. Officially, according to the software development life cycle, right, is after you've done your requirement gathering, you've done your analysis, you've done your design, you've developed. So it's after the development stage comes testing. That is the official answer to your question. Unofficially, I feel that testing should no. I want you to word testing. A QA should be involved even from the beginning, from the requirement gathering, right? Because even at requirement gathering, now when you are discussing the things that you want to bring to the system, right? A QA has I don't want to use the word, but for lack of better word, a QA has a kind of more technical and user friendly mindset of the application. A QA would know that okay, yes, this is what the users would definitely want to have on the system. I think this is a nice to have, but how about we do this another way? Instead of going the long route of doing this, doing this, doing that, why don't we shorten it, make the system better by doing this and doing that? So to me, I always say that QA should start from requirements gathering, even during requirement gathering, even during design. Like for example, maybe when the UI UX guy is designing his Figma design, right? The QA should also look at it because it usually causes fights between let me use the word fight, but a little scruffle between QAs and UI engineers when, for example, now what is on the design it does not really make sense to you, or the developer develop exactly tooth and nail what is saw on the design, and you are coming to tell the developer that look, this is nice and all, but can we have this button removed, or can we grade this button out when we're not using it? And the developer say no, it's what is in the design I built, so what is in the acceptance criteria that I built. I'm not going to do anything again. but you understand that this is not a good user experience. So my unofficial answer is QA should be involved in all process of software development lifecycle. Is there any other question?
Okay, so in a nutshell now, as a product, because I'm a PM, so I'm just speaking from my own point. So a product
Okay.
manager, when you are creating your user story, your UX flow acceptance criteria, as you're carrying developers along, you're also carrying the QA tester
Very,
along.
very important.
Okay.
You have to carry, as a project manager, your best friend should be a QA. Your best friend literally has to be a QA, because the QA that's going to give your sign off. If a QA is not satisfied with what is on the system, it's not going to give you a sign off. It's not going to create your change request or whatever. They're going to be stuck, and you want your product to be released as soon as possible. So your best friend is definitely QA and your designer.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome, Abigail. Victor, do you have any question?
Yeah, I do. Good afternoon again. So based on what she asked, she said, "Are we to when should testing start for QA?" But I want to know if companies have standards that okay, in our company we'll start testing after the product has been developed or during coding process or during the coding stage. So the companies say okay, we follow the agile method, and some will say we follow the waterfall model. I just want to understand whether companies have standards for all this.
Yes, there are standards to every process, every company, but depending on the company, you can't expect the startup that is urgently trying to get his or her products into the market to be following all the process as neatly as possible. Likewise, you can't expect a big organization that has its reputation on the line to come and start jumping compliance and very important protocols. So yes, it depends on the organization. Yes, there are processes. There's always going to be a process involved, and depending on the organization, they might decide to follow it or not. It just depends on the organization.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So, do we have any other question?
All right, I guess we don't have any other question, Felix.
Okay. This last 15 minutes was interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on. So, what do I have in my slide? Hold on, test plan. Hold on. So, we don't component of test case, test case practice. So, let's talk about writing effective test cases. So, like I always like to advise every QA I come across is that before you even start writing your test case, you need to understand your project. If you don't have a clear understanding of what you want to test, you won't be effective, you won't be able to think out all your scenarios, and you end up missing out things. And if you don't have someone that's supervising what you do, you could miss out on a lot of bugs that could damage your reputation and the company's reputation also. So first thing first, understand your product, your the feature and product you're about to work on. Then your test case. Remember, I said test case is the instruction. Test scenarios is what you want to test. Test script is a document that consists of all your test cases. Now, so if you're writing an instruction, you need to keep it as simple as possible. Please keep it simple. So just like now, I just simply would verify that user is able to log in is unable to log in with an empty email. This is as straightforward as it gets, because you need to understand that you won't really be working with a particular organization your entire life, except you're the owner of the company. And even if you're the owner, you're not going to be writing test cases, right? So there are definitely going to be other QAs that are going to be coming to pick up your documents. So it's always to avoid everybody calling you on Friday and every other day to come and explain what you wrote in your test case. I don't understand what you're trying to execute. Keep it simple. Don't make it so bothersome. It shouldn't be too long. The test case itself shouldn't be long. That is your test case itself. The accepted and actual results, those can be long and detailed, no problem. You have to explain what the outcome should be. But your test case should be as simple as possible to understand. Try to use easy to understand English and try to use correct English. Try to avoid any grammatical any grammar error and just keep it simple because you're not the only one that's going to be testing. So just like today, finish through this test case. In the next 5 years now, maybe one Emmanuel wants to pick up this test case and to test, and he sees this and he's now asking what was this guy trying to achieve? I don't understand what it is. But if it's simple to understand, is he doesn't need to call him, he just need to just look up the test script and execute his test. And also a test cases are QAs very most important too, because sometimes it could be in a new organization, right? And as a QA, all you just need is just to have access to the test script. Once you go through the test script, you have a feel and a better understanding of what the system is about. So like myself, whenever I want to test something that I'm not really familiar with, I'll be like, okay, can I see the test script? What I just someone trying to talk. Okay. So once I just see the test, yeah, I can hear myself. I think someone's trying to say something. Okay. So, and once I just see the test script, right, I just know I have an idea of what I want to test. It helps me. I don't really need to call on anybody. I'm not saying that the test script is you don't need your knowledge here. You don't need somebody to come and explain the system to you, right? No. You still need somebody to explain the system to you, but in your own personal time, you just going through the test script will enable you to understand what the system is all about. You see all the different scenarios that was tested, and it also guides you on writing your new test cases in its test script. So test test script is very important. It's a little bit annoying, but it's also very important. And another reason why your test cases are important is serves as an evidence in case when there's an issue on production, because sometimes like we're not all perfect. I'm not going to accuse whether it's the developer's fault. I don't like playing the blame game. I always like trying to make the system work as efficient as possible. But there are instances where a bug could slip into production. Maybe it's something you have reported or something that you've actually tested and it was working fine before. How are they going to know that you as a QA, you actually tested that feature, it's actually passed or not? It's through your test case. So if there's any need for any audits and and you're on a panel and they ask you, okay, defend yourself, all you need to do is simply root out your test scripts and scroll to your test case ID and show them the test case, which is the instruction which you performed. Once they go through that instruction and they see if you have a comment, they see your comments, they see your status of that test, they know that, okay, yes, this person had actually executed this test and it passed as the date when he tested it. So if, for instance, now maybe in 2 days from now, as I've said that this particular test scenario, this particular test case passed. 2 days later, maybe somebody went to go and sneakily or however he wants to do it, deploy something to production and now breaks this particular flow. And you now, because whenever there's an issue on production, the first person to call is the QA. They will always ask, who tested this particular thing? So they'll ask you, okay, you say you tested this. How come I'm seeing this issue on production? Did you not test this system well? That's the next question they're going to ask. So your only way of defending yourself is like, yes, I tested this system well, and I can prove that from my test scripts. You pull out your test script and you show them the instruction, which is your test case. That will help you in defending yourself. So without this documentation, there's no means to defend yourself, and you'll easily be able to throw blame at you. So that is another reason why the test case is very, very, very important. I had a notification like someone has a question. Is there any question?
No question. Go ahead.
Okay, no question. All right, thank you. So I think that's all for both test plan and test cases. We also talked about creating test cases and talking about the test scenarios. So the last thing we'll talk about is the test suite management. So we have different type of test suite management. We have things like Sapphire, we have Jira. So people really use Jira to write test cases like that. Although you can use Jira to write test case, but I don't like it. It's not really interesting to use. I actually prefer using Azure. I don't mind using Azure to write test cases. It's actually much more neater and organized than Jira. But the traditional method of managing your test script is using Excel. So it's old fashioned, but I would say 90% of companies in Nigeria use Excel to write their test cases. So you definitely Excel is your number one tool you need to understand how to use. So you can't use Excel on your mobile device. So you definitely need to use Excel on your laptop. You need to understand how to structure your cells and how to make your test scripts looks as neat as possible with your correct grammar and just you can don't make it too colorful. This is not a playground. Just use as little colors as possible. The only color that should be on your test script is just on the header, your test QA test status. That's all. Basically, that should be where you should actually add your colors so that anybody that just sees pick up your test script and they want to look for field tests case, they just scroll to the test QA test status column. They just scroll down. What they see red, they know that okay, this thing failed. Why did it fail? Have they fixed it or not? Was there a defect linked to that particular test case? So just try to make sure your test suite is your test script is as organized as possible. And yes, there are other online test suite management like Sapphire. Sapphire is also it's a bit like as using Azure. You can just create a free account and just play around with it. Then there are also new test suite management. So try the one from Scandium. It's nice. It's nice. You can also look at that one too. So, but basically, just first thing first is to learn how to use Excel, learn how to be comfortable writing your test cases on Excel before looking into any other any other test suite management application. Because 8 out of 10 times you're going to use Excel in the company you're going to work with, except you use things like Azure or Jira or Sapphire. Is there any other question before we call this session to a close? Hi, Shine. Good evening. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yes,
So
good
I
evening.
wanted to ask a question about on test case. So let's say if
Okay.
we're writing a test case, can we use that on a login page? Can we use that same test page on test case on a login page for email and password, and then we have another project? Can we use that test case to on that other project?
On that other project.
Yes,
So,
can it be reusable if the two like if the requirements are the same. Let's use that Facebook. We have email and phone number. Then you're working on another project that has email and phone number. Can it be
but
reused?
also, but also a login function. Is it the same login
Yes,
function also? And yes, why
yes,
not?
yes.
You can reuse it. Yes, 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 you can. You can. So reuse, you can just copy it. right? It's not like you're going to use like Facebook test script and go and see and go and present to Amazon. Maybe you're working with Facebook now. You now had another job in Amazon. Now want to now carry your Facebook test script and come and present in Amazon. No, you can't do that. You can only just copy it into your Amazon test script you've written a couple of login test cases before, right? You can copy them and still use it again, provided they're using the same fields and is similar. But it's always ideal to write your test case from scratch. So that is the reason why some QAs like myself don't like writing it, but we have to. So yes, that is it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome. We have two other hands. James. Hi, James. Do you have a question?
All right, so thank you so much. I have two concerns. One, is there by standard, right, or from your experience, is there a lifespan for a test case? Like at this point, this test case should have um fizzled out or should have expired or should no longer be usable or applicable. Is there a lifespan for a test case? One. Then secondly, I'm looking at a scenario where apparently the QA you test whatever you're testing, you are having the final user at the back of your mind, right? But then again, I want to believe that whatever you're testing, there is a client who owns that job, who has given your organization that contract. For example, I start to be corrected, but I'm just thinking if that is the scenario, right? And then you have tested with having the users at the back of your mind, and then you have found some improvement that should be made on the system. Well, the system works, right? But you have seen where the system may actually need further improvement or refinement. But management is saying, no, tester ABC, we cannot implement your suggestions, all right, because the client has specifically signed an SLA that says I want this system to perform A, B, C, nothing more, nothing less. But you know, as the professional and having tested this system, that in 3, 4 years, this system is going to break. But management says, no, you cannot. If the customer wants, they should reach out to us. Maybe their payment does not cover that aspect of improvement you are suggesting. What do? Do you fold your hands? Do you walk away? Remember your integrity is here. And you, the tester, I'm sure whatever you test, your name is appended to whatever you test. In 3, 4 years, will that come back to you? All right. What do you do? How do you navigate such kind of scenario? Supposing it happens.
Okay, those are very, very interesting questions. So let me start with the first one. Exploration of test cases. Um, Not really. So I've worked on a project where the test case was written like 10 years ago. And yes, it's not like definitely there are obviously improvements on some particular features, but like for example, now let's use Facebook. I'm going back to Facebook now. Remember that currently on Facebook today, we are able to log in with both email or a phone number, but it was not always like that. At some point, it was always strictly email, right? So you say that you want to now find that ancient ancient test case and delete it? No, you won't delete it. It should just be there for record purposes, right? So you're obviously going to create a new test case in the same test script. Remember, test cases are your instructions, right? So you should always have an instruction for the updated feature in that test script. So you could be working on something that has been maybe like that. I'm always going to be using login because that's what you just with our test cases on, right? So that particular login feature, you have a couple of test cases that speak to login that was written 5 years ago. 5 years later, we decided to revamp the whole login feature. We've changed some things, we've added some new things. We're still going to write new test cases for login feature 5 years later. You're not going to use the same test case that was written 5 years ago again. It's still going to be there. It's still going to be in the test script, but it's not going to be reused. So I'm not going to say that yes, test case expire. It will just be there for record purposes, but it doesn't really expire. Then for your second question, which was my favorite question, because I've experienced that a lot actually. So that is why I always tell QAs that your test script is your weapon in the corporate warfare. Now, I know we have some couple of project managers on the call, so I'm just going to be blank, right? Now, there's some instance where you noticed a particular feature that is not working as expected. It's working fine according to what your project manager wants, according to the user story, according to the acceptance criteria. Everything is working perfectly according to the acceptance criteria. But based on your rigorous testing, you notice that there's a flaw. There's a flaw in the system. Now, what do? You raise your defects, right? Normally, right? You raise your defects, you speak to the developers, and maybe cost maybe the cost of repairing that or the cost of implementing that fix is not what the management wants to cater for. And you know this is a flaw that definitely is going to come back to bite the company. What you simply can do is remember on your test, so remember that your QA status, right? You have it's not only pass and fails that you have, right? You can also have a pending status. So that kind of situation, you won't fail it, you won't pass it because so it depends. It depends. You can if no, you can actually fail that particular test case. Then you can leave a comment why it is failed. You can leave your concern. So this QA comment will be you talking for you, right? So obviously you must definitely have your defects for that. So that in case if now management, everybody have said that no, let's ignore this, let's go live, and there's nothing you can do about it. Even they've convinced your line manager, they've convinced everybody that look, this is not an issue that we should just go live with it. Fine, your line manager would definitely advise you that look, James, you raised out this issue. Please document it somewhere else. Somewhere, just make sure you document it. Make sure you have an open defect for this particular issue. So that even if it's like 3 years or 5 years, whether you're in the company or not, when the issue comes back to bite them, you now look and remember that oh, this defect was actually open and was raised by a QA some time ago. They'll now ask themselves, why was this not looked into? Now remember that oh, it was not, and maybe they're trying to manage costs at the time. So that's your own evidence. Because trust me, if that's an issue that you reported and they ignored, 9 out of 10 times they're still going to blame you for not fixing it. So your evidence is your test cases that you actually documented that, and everything is documented. So in case if anybody wants to come and call you out, you can always just come and say, look, I have this documented, this is what I did, and yeah, I called it out, but no one said anything about it. So those are my answers to your questions. Are you satisfied with that, James?
Makes sense. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. We have one more hand. I think Linus, you have a question. Okay. Is there any other question or any comments that anyone has? If there are no questions, I hope you guys enjoyed this session. It was really entertaining and engaging for me as well. We'll catch you on the next
Can you hear
class. Oh, okay. Yeah, we still have a question. Yes. Hi, Vicky, we can hear
me?
you. But I think
Sorry.
I don't know if it's your earpiece, but it's really cracking. Can you unplug your earpiece
Now,
so I can hear you well? Yeah?
okay, can you hear me better?
Yes, I can hear you better.
Okay. So in regards to test plan, so
Okay.
you said something like the QA engineers, they are the
Mm-hmm.
ones mostly responsible for the test planning, for writing it out here. So now
Mm-hmm.
in a situation where you are you're just a start. You're okay. You're new in the system,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no QA engineer, so you're actually
Mm-hmm.
the one responsible to write this test plan. How do you go about it?
Okay. Since you are
That's
new,
one of it. Sorry, that's one of the
okay,
questions.
sorry, fine. Okay, continue.
And then you didn't explain what SQA audit is.
Oh,
So
yeah,
yes,
that's true.
and then another thing, who else has access to these um the test scripts? In situations where you have comments, you have a developer's name attached to some things and all of that. So who and who have access to these documents, and how do you tend to report if they don't? How do you tend to report that okay, there's a defect or there's something they need to work on and all of that? So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so I remember your question, but let me just answer what's on my head now. Let me start with SQA audit. SQA audit is just software quality assurance. It just SQA is just software quality assurance, right? So in as much as you're a QA testing software, somebody is also going to validate what you are doing. There's always going to be an audit for everything you do. Your company needs to know that you're not faking what you're doing. You're actually doing what you are doing, right? There's somebody that's going to checkmate what you work on, right? Just the way you are checkmating what developers are working on, somebody is going to checkmate what you are working on. That's just the easiest way I can explain what an SQA audit is. It's not something that every organizations do. It's mostly done in big organizations. It's not something that you see in a startup. Then number two, or in no particular order. So the next question now, who have access to the test scripts? Practically anybody can have access to the test scripts, but it belongs to the QAs, right? So it's not like we're going to start giving developers test scripts just like that. If they request for it, it's fine. You are not hiding it from developers. And in most times, right? No, sorry, not most times, rarely, but I've seen it happen before. Developers will be like, "Can I see your test case?" So that they will even know how to build their own system, right? Because now, since if a developer knows what you plan on validating against, they'll be cautious enough to avoid that and to make sure they implement a build that will cater to all your scenarios. So yes, that is why you have to have your test case ready before the developer is even done building. Then, what's the last question? I think.
Test
Sorry, can
planning.
you remind me? Oh, test planning. What about test planning? You asked.
Okay, I said that in a situation you made mention that a QA engineer is responsible for the test planning. So I'm saying
Mhm.
in a situation
Okay. Yes.
whereby you don't have any QA, you're new into the system, and you're
Okay.
you're
Okay.
asked to
Yes.
take it up. So how do you go about it?
Okay, yes, yes, yes. So since you are new and there's no QA processes already, so you are going to be the one to start it. And at this point, you have the liberty to determine however your test plan would be. So what you can do, you can just go online, look for sample test plan, and look for anyone that speaks to what your company, the information that your company will provide, right? So that's what you use. Since you're the one that's starting it online, it's maybe, or what you can do, you could use the test plan from your previous organization. Maybe it's just edit it and structure it just similar to that. Not exactly, right? Because every organization is different, every organizational processes are different. So you can just use that to help you to create your test plan for this new place that does not have the QA processes that have been started. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Guys, we've come to the end of today's session. I really, 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 really enjoyed all the wonderful questions that I've asked. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate every single one of you for joining this wonderful community and session. We'll see you again next week for the next class. Do have a lovely weekend and get ready for tomorrow. Bye, guys.